So this first set of operations is just occurring on that first initial card, or is it happening on?
So what I'm doing, no, it's what I'm doing here is before I start to do my loop
Mm,
below, I calculate a starting position for the first card. So the first card that I create in my loop
mm.
will be placed right here.
And it then becomes the reference point for all the rest of them.
That becomes the reference point for the rest. And then I have a loop within a loop, rows and columns, and I simply take the starting position X multiplied by the row or the column that I'm in, and then multiplying that by the card width. So the first time I'm in essentially column 0, I minus 1, 0 multiplied by card width is 0, add that to start X, and I get this X position. On the next iteration through, I am at the next iteration through this loop, I'll be at column 2. 2 minus 1 equals 1 multiplied by the card width plus start X puts it here, and so on and so forth.
And I would say anybody who's watching this or listening or whatever, to take this, download the code and take this snippet out. So go back to the code if you would for a moment.
Absolutely.
So this loop within a loop, that you've got there at the bottom, that's an important piece of code that you can use probably in a variety of different situations. But it can kind of almost stand on its own. So definitely download the code and take a look at how that's working, because it's an interesting piece of code.
So I made an adjustment. I should have done this as a demonstration earlier, but I set the starting X to 0, 0, and now we can see that our first card is aligned, so the center of that card is in the upper left-hand corner of our screen, which is not what we want. What we want is to move it over to the center.
So we've got a grid pattern. It's just not positioned
not
properly.
Centered appropriately on our screen.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that earlier I said that I wasn't being entirely accurate about the layout. This bit right here is not actually centered. It's a few pixels down because I wanted to leave room for the HUD, and the way I did that was this is centered. I simply added an additional 20 pixels to my starting Y position, and that pushed all of the rows down by 20 pixels.
So I can imagine that the next question that somebody's going to ask, and you may get to this in just a minute, is that, I want to put banners down at the bottom, right? I want to put ads in my game.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right. Let's say you wanted your HUD. Okay, so there's a couple of things we could do. I'll take on exploration of modifying this code. One, let's say you didn't want to have the HUD at the top, or you wanted to put this HUD at the bottom. You could simply just adjust your position like this. And now we start our board at the top of the screen, and of course then I'll have to go modify the HUD code and have it place it down here. But by simply adjusting the starting Y position, I've made it easy to move the entire board in a sense. This too would be the way that you would, if you didn't want to have HUDs at all and you want to have an ad at the bottom or at the top of your screen, you could do this by adjusting the starting position. But let's say that you wanted both space, have the HUD with the countdown and the matches count, but you also want to make room for a banner at the bottom. The only way you're going to be able to achieve this is by making more room by reducing the size of your cards. So we could simply just go to the top here, and we could make a small adjustment. Let's say minus, 10 pixels per card. So I've changed the card height ever so slightly. It still centers as it was previously, but the cards are now shorter. So let's go ahead and move these up a little bit more. Scroll down here. Let's do let's try minus 30. Just sort of winging it here. Would it come up? That's too much. Let's try minus 10.
And this is an important demonstration, I think, because there's times I think, myself included, where we might think that it it would be easy to map all this stuff out ahead of time, and you probably could if you really want to expend the energy. But for the most part, it all comes down to fiddling with numbers.
Yeah. So, but the thing is this is fiddling with numbers, but a lot of this, as you can see, all I'm doing is changing one little bitty number in one place, or maybe two different locations, changing the size of the card and changing the starting position of the first card, and that affects everything else as far as the grid layout goes. So, although I didn't do a real great job of describing it, you can see that in just a few lines of code, if you understand what you're doing with regards to the starting position, you can easily control the rest of the layout of your board with just a little bit of math in a very simple loop.
I'm just going to throw this out there too, and this is me. I understand that this is me perhaps complicating but an alternate way to do this, and it's a way that I do it in a game I'm working on that uses a grid layout, through a different type of calculation is probably too involved to go into here. You can build your grid around a center point, throw all those objects into a display group, and return that display group as an object, as your grid object. And at that point, you can say place the grid at center X and center Y, or wherever it needs to be. It's a little more involved, and it's just a way of doing things. I don't think any one is better than the other. It's just a method.
Yeah. So on my end, your microphone kind of cut out a little bit, but I think what you said was you placed your objects around a center, and then you recentered that whole group as a set. And you could do that by putting them in a group, and you could create a display group and have 0, 0 be the point around which all your cards are calculated, their positions, and simply move, the game doesn't agree with me, simply move the group to the position where you want the center of the board to be. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
That is what I was saying.
Yeah, so there's a number of correct ways. There's no one correct way to do that, to do this.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So the key to making any of these work is understanding how the graphics system works in Corona. And simply, you have to understand, first of all, I've seen a lot of questions in the forums lately. You have to understand auto-scaling, which means you got to go take a look at config.lua and the documentation on that and understand how it works and affects what you're seeing on the screen. And then understanding that, then you have to understand basically why X and Y start in the upper left corner, traditionally. You can modify this. And X moves to the right as it increases, and Y moves down as it increases. Understanding that, you're set. Calculating a grid after that is very simple. So, I don't think I'm going to cover anything else today.
Okay. So that gets everybody where they can create a grid. They can compose their card objects. They can get them onto the screen, flip them, all that kind of stuff like that. What do we want to talk about next time?